from the I-Team on the case against Jussie Smollett, a judge's ruling breathing new life into the case against the former Empire actor.
This could mean new charges against Smollett for allegedly faking a hate crime. A special prosecutor's been ordered to look at how the Cook County State's Attorney's Office handled this investigation. State's Attorney Kim Foxx recused herself, but then put her deputy in charge of the case. The judge ruling Foxx had no right to do that, citing an inter-office memo reported by the ABC 7 I-Team.
In February of 2019, American actor Jussie Smollett was arrested and faced criminal charges for allegedly filing a false police report and for disorderly conduct. Smollett had claimed that on January 29th he had been attacked by two men who beat him, tied a rope around his neck, and doused him with bleach, while berating him with homophobic and racial slurs. However, Chicago police believe that Smollett paid two men who were familiar with Smollett to help orchestrate the attack. The men have reportedly been cooperating with investigators. Smollett, who was an actor on the television show Empire, whose studio was in Chicago, is also being investigated by the FBI as to whether or not he sent a threatening letter to the studio just days before the attack. Days later, a total of 16 criminal charges were dropped against the Empire actor, raising suspicion amongst the citizens of Chicago, including the Chicago Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson, as well as the mayor Rahm Emanuel, who called it a whitewash of justice, which prompted the Chicago Police Union to call for a federal investigation of the Cook County State Attorney Kim Foxx. Text messages had shown that Foxx was in communication with a family friend of the Smollett family after the alleged attack. Foxx later recused herself from the investigation. Smollett is also being investigated for sending a racist and homophobic letter to himself. In May of 2019, an Illinois judge ordered that the criminal case file become unsealed, with the Chicago police who were involved in the arrest of Smollett claiming that he faked the attack. The two men involved in the incident with Smollett are brothers of Nigerian descent. They told police that Smollett paid them to help him fake the attack. They are now suing Smollett's attorneys for defamation of character. Smollett alleged that his attackers had placed a noose around his neck and was curiously still wearing it at the time the police arrived. What's more curious is that the alleged attack occurred within weeks of the anti-lynching bill being introduced to the Senate, which passed unanimously. The bill was authored by Senators Kamala Harris of California, Cory Booker of New Jersey, and Republican Tim Scott of South Carolina.
And that is why we are here again today, to face the history of lynching in this country. From 1882 to 1986, the United States Congress failed to pass anti-lynching legislation when it had the opportunity more than 200 times. Victims of lynching were dragged out of their homes. They had ropes wrapped around their necks. They were hanged on trees. In many cases, they were castrated and burned as crowds of people watched and applauded.
The odd timing of these two events did not go unnoticed, and the connections between Kamala Harris, Jussie Smollett, and the anti-lynching bill were quickly pointed out by Tariq Nasheed, a film producer who also goes by the name King Flex. As Nasheed notes, the two have been seen campaigning together regularly, and Harris's support for the actor seemed to be nearly perfect timing for the alignment of the passing of her bill. Co-author of the bill, Cory Booker, as well as other high-profile Democrats, were quick to fall in line in support of the actor. Mainstream media outlets were also quick to express their support for the actor. That is, until he was arrested in late February 2019. But it was not the curious connection between Smollett, Harris, Booker, and the anti-lynching bill that caused police to reopen the investigation. It was the text messages between Cook County prosecutor Kim Foxx and Tina Chen. Tina Chen is a Chinese-American lawyer who was born in the U.S. to Chinese immigrants who fled the People's Republic of China in 1949. From 2011 to 2017, she served as assistant to President Barack Obama and chief of staff to First Lady Michelle Obama, as well as executive director of the White House Council on Women and Girls. She graduated from Radcliffe College of Harvard University in 1978 and in 1984 received her law degree from Northwestern University School of Law. During her White House tenure, Chen was also in charge of the White House Office of Public Engagement alongside Valerie Jarrett. Chen has also been affiliated with groups such as Vice's Diversity and Inclusion Board, Uber's #MeToo Advisory Board, and the Grammys Task Force for Inclusion and Diversity. In 2019, Chen was appointed to lead an inquiry into allegations of sexual harassment in the Southern Poverty Law Center, which led to the firing of co-founder Morris Dees and legal director Rhonda Brownstein. The Southern Poverty Law Center has long been mired in controversy due to their connections with many fringe groups, including the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, the Progressive Labor Party, the Students for a Democratic Society, the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Weather Underground. Tina Chen was also listed in the 2009 White House visitor logs as having met billionaire George Soros, who is a heavy contributor to the Southern Poverty Law Center by way of Media Matters. George Soros also donated a total of $408,000 to super PACs that helped support Kim Foxx's run for Cook County State Attorney. According to the text messages, Kim Foxx had reportedly asked police to stand down at the request of Tina Chen. Chen was served a subpoena for the case but refused to accept it, which led Illinois Appellate Judge Sheila O'Brien to petition for an appointment of a special prosecutor to look into the state's attorney office handling the Smollett case. In March of 2018, Chen was seen at South by Southwest in Austin to proclaim that there's no time's up without women of color, alongside Jussie Smollett's sister, Journey Smollett Bell. The two were spotted again in May of 2018 at the United States Women's Summit in Los Angeles alongside Michelle Obama. Chen also came under fire for funneling more than $200,000 into the 2008 Obama presidential campaign while working as a lawyer at Skadden Arps. Chen's firm of Buckley LLP is also a major partner of Kids in Need of Defense, or KIND, which was founded by the Microsoft Corporation and actress Angelina Jolie to create a pro bono movement of law firms, corporations, NGOs, universities, and volunteers to provide quality and compassionate legal counsel to unaccompanied refugee and immigrant children in the United States. Essentially, legal representation for illegal immigrants. This is alarming given the sheer number of corporations and media entities that support KIND, such as Amazon, AT&T, Coca-Cola, Disney, Facebook, NBC, Netflix, Nickelodeon, Pfizer, Uber, Starbucks, Viacom, Warner Brothers, and Yahoo, just to name a few. What's even more alarming is their connection to the Clinton Foundation. Here is President of KIND Wendy Young giving a 2014 speech to the University of Arkansas Clinton School of Public Service as part of their speaker series.
I wanted to start just by more broadly introducing you to the issue of unaccompanied immigrant and refugee children. When I often speak in settings like this and I tell people that thousands of children arrive at the border of the United States each year seeking protection, I get a lot of kind of puzzled looks. People do not expect children to be on the move alone around the world, and I think it truly is a red flag.
Even more alarming still are Wendy Young's previous connections, having held prior immigration policy positions with organizations such as the United Nations, High Commissioner for Refugees, the Women's Refugee Commission, the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, and the National Council of La Raza. Worrying connections to say the least given the Catholic Church's long history of child abuse and rape, and La Raza being one of the wealthiest and most politically powerful militant organizations in the country, notoriously violent, racist, subversive, and known for child abuse and molestation. Along with Chen's Buckley LLP, other major law firms partnered with KIND are Perkins Coie LLP, Venable LLP, representing Tony Podesta, and Sidley Austin LLP. Chen's connections to Smollett, Fox, as well as the Obama administration were alarming to say the least. But one other connection of note is her childhood friendship with Amy Rule, wife of Rahm Emanuel, former Obama White House Chief of Staff, former mayor of Chicago, and fellow graduate of Northwestern University. Emanuel has long been riddled with political scandal himself, in particular with his appointment to the Obama administration. Emanuel had garnered support from the National Jewish Democratic Council, which many Democrats feared would interrupt the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. Emanuel's father, Benjamin Emanuel, was a pediatrician who in the 1940s worked with the militant Zionist group Irgun, known to be violently anti-Arab, and the same group who in 1946 bombed the King David Hotel in Jerusalem, killing 91 people. But it would seem, at least outwardly, that Rahm Emanuel's ideals are very much his own. In 2012, Emanuel appointed Ahmed Rahab, the head of the local Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, Chicago chapter, to the New Americans Advisory Committee, The committee was charged with developing a roadmap that will ensure Chicago continues to thrive and grow and attracts the world's leading human capital to compete in the 21st century global economy and beyond. Emanuel had already been linked to CARE in 2008 when he was White House Chief of Staff, when it became known that the FBI had broken off communications with CARE in 2008 over concerns about their roots with a Hamas-supported network. This list was also known as the Palestine Committee and featured CARE founders Omar Ahmad and Nihad Awad. Although CARE was not directly implicated in the Palestine Committee, the Palestine Committee was created by the Muslim Brotherhood to help Hamas with what one FBI official said, what it needs of media, money, men, and all of that. Ahmed Rahab was appointed to the Chicago office to the Committee on Immigrant Policy. The Council on American Islamic Relations, or CARE, has long been known to be connected with Hamas and Muslim Brotherhood, is currently supporting Representative Rashida Tlaib of Michigan. In February of 2019, Tlaib spoke at a CARE banquet alongside Imam Omar Suleiman, a Muslim Brotherhood-connected imam who has a long history of anti-LGBT, anti-woman, and anti-Semitic ideals. CARE has also lent their support to Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, who recently defended CARE with her infamous "some people did something" statement. In 2000, President Bill Clinton appointed Rahm Emanuel to the board of directors of Freddie Mac, a federal home loan mortgage corporation, where he earned at least $320,000 in a year that was riddled with scandals. It wasn't until 2015 that the Securities and Exchange Commission finally settled with Freddie Mac executives over allegedly misleading investors about the quality of subprime mortgages. Freddie Mac's CEO at the time, Richard Searon, was being represented by Sidley Austin, LLP, the prolific law firm which had once employed Barack and Michelle Obama, as well as Weather Underground founder Bernadine Dorn. Kim Foxx is an American politician currently serving as the state's attorney for Cook County, Illinois. She received her undergraduate and law degrees from Southern Illinois University, and she's also a member of the board of Adler University. Kim is married to Kelly Fox, who is a nonprofit manager for World Business Chicago, and according to his LinkedIn profile, has extensive civic ties and volunteers his time with several community organizations. Fox has also served as chief of staff to Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle, who's also no stranger to scandal. Preckwinkle was connected to Alderman Edward M. Burke following his arrest for corruption by the FBI, after he had allegedly tried to extort fast food executive Shukat Danani to make an illegal $10,000 donation to Preckwinkle's campaign. Burke is not the only alderman to have his house raided by the FBI. In June of 2019, Alderman Carrie Austin had her 34th Ward office raided as well. Austin is the second longest serving active alderman behind indicted alderman Ed Burke. Austin formerly worked closely with Burke as City Council's budget chair. Austin allegedly got a $231,000 federal housing loan to purchase a home in a development that's in line to get millions of dollars in city subsidies. The project was owned by JTA Development, which is owned by John Powen, a former attorney at Sidley Austin, LLP. In September of 2018, Preckwinkle announced her candidacy for mayor of Chicago to succeed Rahm Emanuel in the 2019 election. She was defeated in the April 2nd election by Lori Lightfoot. Like Kim Foxx, Preckwinkle has outwardly expressed her support for Barack Obama. She currently resides in Hyde Park, along with Rahm Emanuel, Barack Obama, and Weather Underground co-founders Bernadine Dorn and Bill Ayers. The Jussie Smollett incident was hardly Kimberly Foxx's first scandal. In 2017, Fox's top prosecutors dropped double murder charges against Gabriel Solache and Arturo Reyes, who were guilty of a 1998 fatal stabbing of Mariana Soto and his wife Jacinta. After their release from prison, Foxx aided Solache and Reyes, getting them both representation from prominent wrongful conviction law firms to file federal lawsuits against the investigating detectives. Their attorney was Jan Sussler, of the PLO, or People's Law Office. Jan Sussler, back in the 1970s, had helped represent a group of Marxist revolutionaries called the Armed Forces for National Liberation, or FALN, that set off a bomb that killed 4 people and injured many others in a 1975 bombing at the Francis Tavern in New York City. In addition to the FALN, the People's Law Office, or PLA law firm, also represented revolutionary groups like the Black Panthers and the Weather Underground. First Assistant State's Attorney Eric Sussman said that prosecutors still strongly believe that Gabriel Solache and Arturo Reyes are guilty, having confessions of both the two men. However, the judge threw out their confessions of what he called bald-faced lies. Sussman stated that the office had no choice but to dismiss the case. Sussman is not only First Assistant State's Attorney and a former federal prosecutor, he was also in private practice with Sidley Austin LLP. Fox has also been linked to activist Jedediah Brown, who is shown here jumping on stage in March of 2016 at a Chicago rally in protest of then-presidential hopeful Donald Trump. Brown is currently being charged with resisting arrest, obstructing traffic, and 2 counts of misdemeanor battery to a peace officer after an altercation with police during a protest of the fatal police shooting of South Shore barber Harith Augustus. One of the prosecutors on that case was Kim Fox, who has since recused herself after a Facebook picture of the two surfaced online. Brown has been a political supporter of Fox and has shared the stage with her at a news conference on April 6 at the Rainbow Push Coalition headquarters. Fox has taken in over $400,000 from left-wing billionaire donor George Soros by way of super PACs, the Illinois Safety and Justice, and a group called Civic Participation Action Fund. The co-chair of Fox's transition committee in 2016 was Kamala Harris, whom Fox described as a mentor. Kim Fox joined the Cook County State's Attorney Office in 2001, where she prosecuted sex crimes. A year later, the same office filed 21 counts of child pornography charges against entertainer Mr. Robert R. Kelly in connection with a videotape that showed Kelly having sex and urinating on an underage girl. Multiple accusations, and nearly 6 years later, prosecutors were finally able to bring Kelly into court, where it only took a few hours for a jury to declare Kelly not guilty on all 14 charges. Due to the fact that the jurors were not certain about the identity of the person in the video, Mr. Kelly was acquitted of all charges. And although Kim Fox was not directly involved with the R. Kelly case over the years, her office was. She did, however, insert herself into the situation in early 2019, when R. Kelly was once again charged with 11 new counts of sexual assault and abuse. In Fox's first term as Chicago's top prosecutor, she publicly encouraged anyone with knowledge or sexual abuse allegations against R. Kelly to come forward.
But we rely heavily on victim accounts and witness statements to prosecute cases involving sexual assault and domestic violence. I'm here today to encourage victims of sexual assault or domestic violence related to these allegations to please get in touch with our office.
Fox was heavily criticized for this move, as the allegations were still new and the lead prosecutor's role is usually not to comment until there is enough evidence. Fox's public announcement curiously coincided with a 6-hour television documentary featured on the Lifetime channel entitled Surviving R. Kelly, in which various women accused the singer of abuse, including locking them inside a house. Executive producer of Surviving R. Kelly, Dream Hampton, stated that they had approached numerous celebrities to participate in the documentary, including Lady Gaga, Erykah Badu, Celine Dion, Jay-Z, and Dave Chappelle, all celebrities who have been outwardly critical of R. Kelly. In the end, only one stepped forward, singer and entertainer John Legend, who, along with his wife, model Chrissy Teigen, are active in the Democratic community. Both Legend and Teigen hosted a fundraiser in their Beverly Hills home in late 2018 for Democratic Senate candidates. Some of the attendees were Senators Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, Ed Markey, and Chris Murphy. Legend is also a major donor for the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund, which has represented Barack Obama and employs members of his former administration. Due to its star power and celebrity backers, the Time's Up Legal Fund has raised an alarming amount of money over the last few years. The co-founder of the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund is former chief of staff to Michelle Obama and friend of Kim Fox, Tina Chen. The case for R. Kelly took an unusual turn when the Chicago Tribune reported that text messages that had been obtained through an open records request suggested that Chief Chicago Prosecutor Kim Foxx was working with embattled attorney Michael Avenatti. The messages show that Foxx and Avenatti even arranged an office at the O'Hare Airport in Chicago where they could talk privately, and Avenatti thanked Foxx for, quote, being so accommodating. Avenatti had claimed to have multiple tapes of the singer engaging in sexual acts with minors. That accusation, though, fell flat when Michael Avenatti himself was indicted on a wire fraud scheme against shoemaker Nike, who have recently launched a number of controversial ad campaigns over the last few years. Avenatti reportedly threatened to expose the company for paying college basketball players and their families, and then tried to convince Nike to hire him to launch an internal investigation for $15 to $25 million. Mentioned as a co-conspirator along with Avenatti is celebrity attorney Mark Geragos. Oddly enough, it was Geragos who helped negotiate a multi-million-dollar deal between Nike and Colin Kaepernick. Another odd move, as Kaepernick is not currently playing NFL football, but is actively involved in Nike's controversial campaigns. Some of Geragos' other high-profile clients include Susan McDougal, who was previously convicted in the Whitewater scandal involving President Bill Clinton. A few years later, Geragos represented Clinton's brother Roger Clinton in a drunken driving case. Others include Hollywood stars like Winona Ryder, Chris Brown, wife killer Scott Peterson, and Michael Jackson. Geragos is currently representing actor Jussie Smollett. Given the current situation of Avenatti and Geragos, R. Kelly's lawyer, Steve Greenberg, has argued that the tapes be thrown out of court, questioning how Avenatti retrieved the tapes in the first place. An unidentified man who handed the tape to Avenatti reportedly had a history with R. Kelly and told prosecutors how he was paid upwards of $1 million by Kelly's camp to keep the tape from being exposed. Adding to the confusion of the case was Ed Genson, now R. Kelly's ex-lawyer, who had represented Kelly back in 2008 and has represented him twice before. Genson told Chicago Sun-Times columnist Neil Steinberg that R. Kelly was indeed, quote, guilty as hell, and saying, I don't think he has done anything appropriate for years. I'll tell you a secret. I had him go to a doctor to get shots, libido-killing shots. That's why he didn't get arrested for anything else. Normally, such a declaration is grounds for disbarment, but Genson is not concerned with that considering he's dying of bile duct cancer and said, quote, I can say whatever I want, but we've got to do it fast. It would be nice to get it down so somebody knows besides me. Even stranger, Genson's son Morton Genson told reporters that he believed his father wasn't thinking clearly when he gave the interview at his home, saying, quote, he's on a tremendous amount of medication. I'm so distraught about this. It's so wrong. I don't even bring my friends over to visit with him, if you want to read between the lines. As far as I'm concerned, he's not talking to anybody. According to text messages initially obtained by CNN, Fox referenced Jussie Smollett as a washed-up celeb. She also mentioned R. Kelly as a pedophile with 4 victims, 10 counts, in her message to First Assistant State's Attorney Joseph Maggots on March 8th, saying just because we can charge something doesn't mean we should. This clearly seems to show that Fox had a bias against R. Kelly and for Jussie Smollett. Chicago City Police Union has demanded that Cook County State Attorney Kim Foxx resign amid her office's decision to drop the charges. Mayor-elect at the time, Lori Lightfoot, weighed in, saying that Smollett's case doesn't rank as any matter of importance, seeing that this was a decision made during the term of previous Mayor Rahm Emanuel. One of Lightfoot's top unofficial advisors is Mary Dempsey, formerly of Sidley Austin LLP. Lightfoot also received a $10,000 donation from Sidley Austin attorney Thomas Ryan for her gubernatorial campaign. Kim Foxx's connections to dirty Chicago politics runs deep, and yet runs all the way up to the White House. So her loyalty to Jussie Smollett is likely no coincidence. After all, there's more to the Smollett family than meets the eye. Janet Smollett was born Janet Harris on the 27th of November 1952 in New Orleans. In her early years, Harris tutored with Julian Bond, founder of the Southern Poverty Law Center. Harris rose to become a civil rights leader herself and one of the early members of the Black Panther Party, working alongside Huey Newton, Bobby Seale, and Angela Davis, with whom she's remained close friends to this day. Angela Davis is not only a former Black Panther, but a card-carrying member of the Communist Party, and in 1970 was on the FBI's wanted list for murder and kidnapping. It was through Janet Harris's civil rights activism where she met her husband, Joel Smollett, who was born in 1956 to parents Molly Hershenson and Peter Smollett. Joel Smollett is an Ashkenazi Jew of Russian and Polish descent. The two married and went on to have 6 children: Jojo, Jussie, Journey, Jake, Jazz, and Jockey, all who have gone on to have careers in the entertainment industry, which is influenced heavily by Ashkenazi Jews, who would often name their children with the letter J as a code for hiring amongst Hollywood, which may explain Joel and Janet's decision to name all their children with the letter J. In 1994, all 6 children were cast in the ABC sitcom On Our Own, which was about a group of siblings trying to stay together after their parents pass away. The show was canceled after only 1 season. Like their mother Janet, all of the Smollett children have remained active in human rights organizations, and most of them have remained in the entertainment industry. In 2016, Jussie Smollett joined his sister, Journey Smollett Bell, in the WGN slavery drama Underground, a drama about the Underground Railroad, whose executive producer was entertainer John Legend. Underground was also canceled after just 2 seasons. The Smollets have been particularly active in the HIV/AIDS prevention community, as well as Black Lives Matter. In a 2016 New York Times article, Jussie Smollett referenced his mother as a heavy influence to his activism, saying, quote, "My mom was in the movement with Bobby Seale and Huey Newton, and one of her first mentors was Julian Bond." In reference to Angela Davis, Smollett said, "To this day, Angela Davis is one of her dearest friends. We've spent Mother's Day with Angela." Here, Journey Smollett Bell can be seen with Tina Chen on stage speaking on #TimesUp at the 2018 United States of Women Summit. The #TimesUp movement has been heavily supported by the music and Hollywood elite, including a $200,000 donation from Chrissy Teigen and underground producer John Legend. The Smollett family have also lent their support for Barack Obama, which should come as no surprise given their close relationship with Tina Chen. Here, Jussie and his brother Jojo are pictured in 2018 at the White House with Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, where Jussie Smollett states, "With my big bro Jojo, Michelle Obama, and Barack Obama, back when the White House was the kingdom of Wakanda." Wakanda being a mythical location featured in the movie Black Panther, a movie that his mother Janet Smollett helped create. Jussie Smollett has also been equally outspoken against President Donald Trump, having launched a series of tirades against the president on Twitter. One of note coming on the 12th of January 2018, just days before his alleged attack. Smollett's alleged attack drew a firestorm of outrage from mainstream media, celebrities, politicians, and human rights organizations, particularly Black Lives Matter, of which Jussie Smollett is heavily involved, and still closely works with members of the Black Panther Party, featuring luminaries such as Angela Davis, a Smollett family friend. This all changed when news broke that Smollett had allegedly staged the attack, and the text messages between Kim Foxx and Tina Chen had surfaced. In late March of 2018, the movie Black Panther took home numerous awards at the 50th NAACP Awards. Due to Jussie Smollett's arrest, the Empire actor was conspicuously absent, even though he was nominated for an award. At the time, the charges had already been dropped against Smollett, but public embarrassment was still looming. Many celebrities came to the aid of Jussie Smollett, including Representative Maxine Waters, who was at the awards, saying, "Jussie Smollett is like a son to me. I'm very pleased about the verdict. I'm very pleased that he now has an opportunity to pick up and go on with his life."
If you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd, and you push back on them, and you tell them they're not welcome.
Maxine Waters was also coming under fire for her incendiary comments towards the president, which some in the press called reminiscent of Bernadine Dorn in the Weather Underground days. Oddly enough, the very next day, co-founder of the Weather Underground, Bill Ayers, spoke out on Twitter, echoing Waters' sentiment in reference to a Michelle Gunderson, who's a trustee for the Chicago's Teacher Union and co-chair of CORE, or Caucus of Rank-and-File Educators, a group that is also under fire for its, quote, militant unionism. It is also of note that at this very same time, incoming Mayor Lori Lightfoot was trading barbs with Rahm Emanuel over who was responsible for a massive CPS or Chicago Public Schools sex abuse scandal. Bill Ayers' support for Maxine Waters, as well as Waters' support for Jussie Smollett, should be of no shock at all. Maxine Waters has been affiliated with communist militant organizations for decades. In 1982, Waters was attached to the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, a Communist Party front group that was led by Communist Party members, including Angela Davis. In 1984, Waters spoke at a UC Berkeley conference entitled Growth Pains, Dialogues on Employment, Equality, and Environment. The event was sponsored by the Democratic Socialists of America and Socialist Review. Waters has also been a longtime supporter of former Black Panther and Marxist icon Mumia Abu-Jamal, who in 1995 was found guilty of murdering Philadelphia police officer Daniel Faulkner. Waters also sent a former apology to communist dictator of Cuba, Fidel Castro, for mistakenly voting for a House resolution asking Cuba to extradite Assata Shakur, a former Black Panther that killed a police officer and later fled to Cuba. And in 2011, Waters supported the anti-capitalist Occupy Wall Street movement, along with Weather Underground co-founders Bernadine Dorn and Bill Ayers. One doesn't have to look far to see that the Smollett family is more than just an entertainment-reared family. Their activist ties run deep and is reflected through their art. But is their activism more about creating unity or division? Many have argued that Angela Davis is simply a revolutionary hero, an advocate for racial justice. The Black Panther Party arose at a time where racial segregation was a true problem in the United States. Many simply were joining for a sense of protection and community, and as a platform to decry racism and the Vietnam War. Couple that with the U.S. government's mishandling of operations like COINTELPRO, where the intelligence communities had been caught unlawfully spying on some of these groups such as the Black Panthers and Weather Underground. The CIA had a long history of infiltrating some of these groups, and it was often difficult to tell where the danger was really emanating from. But Davis was more than an activist. She was an avowed communist charged with murder and kidnapping in the Marin County courthouse shootout on August 7, 1970 that left 4 dead, including Judge Harold J. Haley. Angela Davis may not have started the violence, but like her contemporary Bernadine Dorn of the Weather Underground, she was not afraid to participate in it.
I mean, that's another thing. When you talk about a revolution, most people think violence, without realizing that the real content of any kind of revolutionary thrust lies in the principles and the goals that you're striving for, not in the way you reach them. On the other hand, because of the way this society is organized, because of the violence that exists on the surface everywhere, you have to expect that there are going to be such explosions. You have to expect things like that as reactions.
Davis had purchased the firearms used for the takeover and was prosecuted for 3 capital felonies, including conspiracy to murder, but was acquitted of all charges. She was represented by famed lawyer Leo Branton Jr., who had gained a name representing singer Nat King Cole, Miles Davis, and Richard Pryor. Branton, along with Charles Gary, represented Robert Wesley Wells, who was sentenced to death for assaulting a prison guard while serving a life term. In 1957, Branton won a reversal of a previous conviction of 14 Communist Party members accused of conspiring to advocate the overthrow of the government. Branton received his law degree from the Northwestern University School of Law, the same school in which Weather Underground co-founder Bernadine Dorn was a clinical associate professor, and of which Dorn's husband Bill Ayers' father, Thomas G. Ayers, sat on the board of trustees for over 30 years, and has a residence hall named after him at 2324 Campus Drive. Angela Davis continues to be active in groups like Black Lives Matter, the #MeToo movement, and the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions Campaign Against Israel, or BDS, a group which has recently received renewed criticism over their support from Representatives Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar. Jussie Smollett's alleged attackers, Abimbola and Olabinjo Osundairo, were arrested on February 13, 2019 at O'Hare International Airport. The brothers had told a reporter from CBS 2 Chicago that they were born and raised in Chicago and are American citizens, but were actually of Nigerian descent and were returning from Nigeria. The two brothers are currently suing Smollett's attorney's firm, Garagos and Garagos, for defamation of character. According to the report, they allegedly punched and poured bleach on Smollett while one of the suspects put a rope around his neck. As they fled the scene, Smollett told police they said, "This is MAGA country." The brothers were familiar with the actor Smollett from the local gym, and Abimbola would on occasion sell the drug ecstasy to Smollett. Court records also showed that Olabinja Osundairo in 2011 was charged with an attempted murder, a stabbing that occurred in North Ashland. Olabinja was sentenced to 2 years of probation and ordered to pay a $674 fine. At the time, neither brother reported having full-time jobs, stating that their monthly incomes were both below $200 a month. Both had run a party and decoration business in 2015, operating out of a building that was owned by their parents. The business was operating at a loss and both filed for bankruptcy. Abimbola, in his bankruptcy filing, claimed an interest in various investments, including 1 share of Alibaba, 4 shares of a pharmaceutical company, and 1 curious share of Berkshire Hathaway, of which he valued at $300, even though 1 single share at the time of Berkshire Hathaway was worth more than $200,000. This would seem to contradict the brothers' claims of being in financial dire straits. According to the Lakeview High School website in Chicago, where the brothers attended, their father is listed as Lanre Osundairo. So is it possible that their father is Prince Lanre Osundairo, not only royalty but a chieftain of the People's Democratic Party, instrumental in putting in General Obasanjo and Goodluck Jonathan into the presidency? Another seemingly odd coincidence given Jussie Smollett and his family's political activism. The brothers were also aspiring models and actors, having modeled previously for a controversial ad campaign on Facebook for ski masks. The brothers also appeared as extras on Season 2 of Jussie Smollett's TV series Empire. Here they can be seen with director Lee Daniels, creator of Empire, and another key figure in the Smollett saga. Lee Daniels is an American director, writer, and film producer who rose to fame with his 2001 hit film Monsters Ball. Daniels is also an activist and Democratic supporter, having directed a 2016 PSA encouraging Americans to vote Democrat, at former President Bill Clinton's request. The PSA featured the cast of the television show Empire, which Lee Daniels was also directing, featuring Jussie Smollett. Daniels also produced a PSA for the Human Rights Campaign regarding the Orlando gay nightclub shooting, killing nearly 50 people, and once again igniting racial tension. The Human Rights Campaign endorsed Bill Clinton for president in '92 as well as Hillary Clinton in 2016. The president of the Human Rights Campaign is Alfonso David, a civil rights lawyer who was also chief counsel to New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who had previously commuted the sentence of Weather Underground member Judith Allen Clark. In 2009, Lee Daniels directed the hit film Precious, a film about parental and sexual abuse. The film starred Gabori Sidibe, Monique, Paula Patton, and Mariah Carey. The film was financed through Lionsgate Entertainment and Smokewood Entertainment, and was given promotional assistance by actors Tyler Perry and Oprah Winfrey. Lionsgate Entertainment Corporation was formed in 1997 by Frank Giustra, who is a heavy Clinton Foundation donor and found himself at the heart of the Uranium One scandal. Lionsgate Entertainment was originally Cinepix, but changed its name to Lionsgate in 1998 when they purchased the Vancouver-based North Shore Studios, owned by the Bronfman family of the Seagram's liquor fortune. The Bronfmans are also involved in a massive scandal involving NXIVM, a sex cult that sisters Claire and Sarah Bronfman were found to be funding. Lee Daniels' other benefactor, Smokewood Entertainment, was also wrapped up in legal issues with the Weinstein Company over the licensing and distribution rights to the motion picture Push, based on the novel by Sapphire, which later became the film Precious. Film producer Harvey Weinstein is also currently facing predatory sexual assault charges, as well as bankruptcy, where he's being represented by the law office of Sidley Austin LLP. Harvey Weinstein quickly became a prime target for the hashtag #MeToo movement, of which many Hollywood elite are a part of, including former Obama official and Smollett family friend Tina Chen. In 2018, Lee Daniels teamed up with fellow producer Whitney Cummings to develop a half-hour comedy special for Amazon based on the Me Too movement. One of the stars of the 2009 Lee Daniels film Precious was comedian and actress Monique, who in 2015 accused Daniels of blackballing her from the Hollywood industry. Monique additionally claimed that funders for the film, Oprah Winfrey and Tyler Perry, had blacklisted her also, saying, quote, "I said no to some powerful people. I said no to Oprah Winfrey. I said no to Tyler Perry. I said no to Lee Daniels. And I said no to Lionsgate." This led to numerous public feuds between Monique, Oprah Winfrey, Tyler Perry, Lee Daniels, television host Steve Harvey, and Whoopi Goldberg, all titans in the black entertainment industry, and all of them coming out publicly to criticize Monique, who claims that Lee Daniels had paid her unfairly for her work on the film Precious, a claim which Daniels, Perry, and Winfrey all denied, and which Monique took heavy criticism in the media. But Monique's claims seem to have been vindicated in summer of 2018 when Rockefeller Records co-founder Damon Dash sued Daniels for $5 million over a $2 million loan to produce The Woodsman, a 2004 drama in which Lee Daniels produced.
Stay on the stage. Okay, so I'm here. Can we turn the lights up a little bit out there, Jonathan? Any lights? That's it? Okay, I want to see it. I know there's usually a curfew here that tell you to get off the stage, but here's what. I broke my ankle. That's why I couldn't move around, guys. Could you see I couldn't move? I was doing lots of hand movement. I did it again. I was playing with my grandkids and I broke my ankle. Okay, all right.
According to Monique, she had been offered the starring role in the series Empire until Lee Daniels later rescinded the offer. Here, Monique explains.
We went back and forth with his company and our company trying to get TV quotes and all. And then I got a call back from him because I hadn't heard where I was supposed to go and do this screen test. And that's when he said, "Mama, you've been blackballed." And I said, "Well, why have I been blackballed?" And he said, "Because you didn't play the game." And I said, "What game is that?" And he was never able to answer that question.
Monique, like Smollett, was seeking more money. More specifically, more money from Lee Daniels, who now, like Oprah Winfrey and Tyler Perry, was a major Hollywood player. Tyler Perry directed a 2013 thriller entitled Temptation, which featured Jussie Smollett's sister, Jurnee Smollett-Bell. Temptation was produced by the Tyler Perry Company and Lionsgate Entertainment. In 2012, Perry teamed up with Oprah Winfrey on the Oprah Winfrey Network. But after 5 years of numerous public disputes with Oprah Winfrey, Perry decided to leave for Viacom, which in August of 2019 was acquired by CBS, whose former chairman and CEO Les Moonves was forced to step down in 2018 over allegations of sexual abuse and harassment, and which also made him a prime target for the Me Too movement. The dispute between Tyler Perry and Oprah Winfrey was over writing, with some noting that the two were having disagreements over Tyler's insistence on pushing a gay agenda, a claim that Perry has long dealt with, seeing that he rose to stardom with a cross-dressing character named Medea. Cross-dressing has long been criticized as an unspoken rite of passage amongst African-American Hollywood actors. But was Jussie Smollett, like Monique, another victim of Hollywood blacklisting? Were his actions politically motivated, or was there something even more sinister at play? After Smollett's alleged attack, much of Hollywood and DC's elite rushed to support the actor, including Tyler Perry and Lee Daniels, who had gone so far as to refer to Smollett as his son, an odd statement given the fact that the two had reportedly been in a romantic relationship. The alleged attack occurred within just days of a second man being found dead in the home of Democratic political activist Ed Buck, who according to reports had an affinity for young black gay men, and is currently dealing with accusations of making revenge porn and human trafficking. Buck was a prolific donor to the Clinton campaign, along with Jeffrey Epstein, Harvey Weinstein, Keith Raniere of NXIVM, and the Bronfmans. The Chicago-based Jussie Smollett case took much-needed attention away from California and the Ed Buck situation, but not the Chicago-based case of singer R. Kelly, who was also being accused of human trafficking, and whose jurisdiction fell under Cook County prosecutor Kim Foxx. In addition to hiring celebrity attorney Mark Garagos, who was also named as a co-conspirator in the R. Kelly trial, Jussie Smollett also hired attorney Todd Pugh, who has formerly worked at Northwestern University School of Law, received his degree at Florida Atlantic University, and served as an intern with the Palm Beach County Public Defender's Office under Chief Investigator Gail Martin, a veteran of both Palm Beach and Broward County, which is one of the biggest counties in the United States for human trafficking. Pugh also worked on the retrial of Rolando Cruz for the rape and murder of 10-year-old Janine Nicorico. Pugh has also represented former Trump campaign advisor George Papadopoulos. Smollett has also acquired the services of Michael Monaco, the defense attorney who is representing longtime Trump lawyer Michael Cohen. Monaco received his degree from Georgetown University in 1969 and later on earned a doctorate from Northwestern University, the same university affiliated with Thomas G. Ayers, son and Weather Underground co-founder Bill Ayers, wife Bernadine Dorn, friend of Thomas G. Ayers and mentor of Barack Obama Newton P. Minow, and Smollett family friend and former Obama Chief of Staff Tina Chen. But how is it that a man who Kim Foxx described as a washed-up actor be able to hire such a high-profile team of attorneys and gather such immediate support of DC and Hollywood's elite, while remaining conspicuously silent on Ed Buck, R. Kelly, NXIVM's Keith Raniere, and convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein? Was Jussie Smollett's attack deliberately staged in order to promote Kamala Harris's anti-lynching bill and stir up racial tension in the process? Was it a distraction from much more sinister events? Was it simply the case of an actor looking to preserve their livelihood? Or could this possibly even have been a cry for help? According to Chicago police records, detectives have employed FBI Supervisory Special Agent Gregory Wing, who oversees the Child Sex Crimes and Violent Crimes Against Children Squad in the FBI's Chicago field office, and is considered one of the top agents investigating child sex trafficking in the country. The document is in regards to a search warrant which was issued pertaining to the Apple Incorporated held iCloud account controlled by Jussie Smollett to FBI analyst Mariela Lopez. In March of 2019, 50 employees, including nurses at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago, were fired for allegedly improperly reviewing Jussie Smollett's medical records. In June of 2019, Cook County Judge Michael Tooman ruled that while Fox did have the right to recuse herself, she did not have the right to select someone from her office to handle the prosecution, and has since assigned a new special prosecutor to oversee the entire case from start to finish, which could bring up again the 16 felony charges against Jussie Smollett, including an investigation into Kim Foxx. As of now, the mysterious case of Jussie Smollett is ongoing.
Good evening. Echoes of the violent radical underground of the 1960s rolled over the New York suburb of Nanuet today in the botched ambush of an armored car that left one guard and 2 policemen dead. Among the 4 suspects arrested was Catherine Boudin, a fugitive since March 6, 1970, when she reportedly fled naked from the flaming ruins of a Greenwich Village townhouse turned bomb factory.
In 1981, an armed robbery was performed on an armored Brinks truck at the Nanuet Mall in New York, killing Brinks guard Peter Page, wounding Brinks guard Joseph Trombino and James Kelly, and subsequently killing 2 NEAC police officers, Edward O'Grady and Waverly Brown. Brown was the first African-American member of the NEAC New York Police Department. The robbery was carried out by 6 Black Liberation Army members, Mutulu Shakur, Kuwasi Balagoon, Samuel Brown, Samuel Smith, Edward Joseph, and Cecilio Ferguson. Also participating in the heist were 4 former members of the Weather Underground, now belonging to the May 19th Communist Organization: David Gilbert, Judith Alice Clark, Kathy Bodine, and Marilyn Buck. As Page and Trombino emerged from the mall carrying bags of money, members of BLA stormed their van and fired with a shotgun and an M16, killing Page and injuring Trombino. From there, the robbers fled the scene where they met members of the May 19th organization in a yellow Honda and a U-Haul truck, which was being driven by Clark. Police pursued the 2 vehicles, first pulling over the U-Haul being driven by Judith Alice Clark, long enough for 6 armed men to emerge from the back of the truck with automatic weapons, killing Brown and O'Grady. Some of the occupants of the U-Haul scattered and climbed into the yellow Honda, which sped off and crashed later, making a sharp turn, injuring Brown's neck and knocking Clark's handgun onto the floor of the car. where police were finally able to arrest Gilbert, Brown, and Clark, holding about $800,000 of the $1.6 million in cash they had stolen. Their trials were heavily publicized and even more heavily guarded, as the BLA was known for attempting to break their members out of prison, as was the case of Assata Shakur. Clark, Gilbert, and Balagoon all refused to appear in court, citing the racist court system. All three were sentenced to 3 consecutive 25-year-to-life sentences, making them eligible for parole in the year 2058. Balagoon, also known as Donald Weems, died in prison from AIDS in 1986. Gilbert and Clark remained in prison. In late 2016, Andrew Cuomo commuted Clark's sentence to 35 years, citing exceptional strides in self-development. Kathy Bodine and Samuel Brown both pleaded guilty to 1 count of felony murder and robbery in exchange for a single 20-year-to-life sentence. Brown ended up being sentenced 75 years to life, while Bodine was paroled in 2003, likely due to the hiring of lawyer Leonard Weinglass, a law partner of Bodine's father, also a high-powered lawyer, Leonard Bodine. Leonard Bodine was a successful civil liberties lawyer with more than 50 years of practice who had defended a number of controversial clients, including Julian Bond of the Southern Poverty Law Center, Paul Robeson, Benjamin Spock, and Daniel Ellsberg. He was introduced to law by his uncle, Louis Bodine, a well-known constitutional lawyer and figure in the Socialist Party. Leonard Bodine also represented one-time union leader Jimmy Hoffa and the Central Bank of Iran during the Iran hostage crisis. Leonard Bodine, as well as Kathy Bodine's lawyer, Leonard Weinglass, had defended Mr. Daniel Ellsberg, who was charged with theft in connection with the Pentagon Papers, which documented the history of the United States' true involvement in Vietnam. Ellsberg was an employee of RAND, which is a non-for-profit think tank affiliated with the Defense Department. RAND was being represented by a senior board member, Newton Minow, a mentor of Barack and Michelle Obama, a friend of Weather Underground founder Bill Ayers' father, Tom Ayers, and senior legal counsel at Sidley Austin LLP. David Gilbert, who is married to Kathy Bodine, is currently serving and is not eligible for parole until October 13, 2056. Kathy Bodine was released in 2003 and was named an adjunct professor at the Columbia University School of Social Work, a controversial appointment due to her violent past. In 1980, David Gilbert and Kathy Bodine gave birth to a son, Chesa Bodine. Due to the fact that both of them were incarcerated, Chesa Bodine was adopted by former Weathermen leaders Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn. Chesa Bodine is an American lawyer, writer, and lecturer, specializing in the U.S. criminal justice system and Latin America policy. He's also a candidate in the 2019 election for San Francisco District Attorney. Chesa Bodine went to Oxford University on a 2003 Rhodes Scholarship, where he earned 2 master's degrees, one in forced migration and the other in public policy in Latin America. Before attending law school, Bodine traveled to Venezuela and served as a translator in the Hugo Chavez administration. Chesa Bodine continues to represent the policies and politics of his activist parents, and his campaign has garnered support from the Real Justice PAC, Smart Justice California, and civil rights leaders like former Black Panther Angela Davis. Here, Bodine can be seen lending his support to Cook County prosecutor Kim Foxx. Kathy Bodine continues to be active in groups like Black Lives Matter, which has gained a lot of support from former Black Panthers like Angela Davis. Her appointment to Columbia University should come as no surprise, as Columbia University has offered numerous advanced academic degrees to people such as Richard Cloward and Francis Fox Piven, both who taught at Columbia University and engineered the social collapse model, now known as the Cloward-Piven strategy. Columbia University offered an education doctorate to Weather Underground co-founder Bill Ayers. Judith Alice Clark, driver of the U-Haul in the 1981 Brinks robbery, was released from prison on May 10, 2019. Mutulu Shakur, the alleged ringleader of the Brinks heist group, avoided arrest for 6 years but was later indicted on racketeering charges and convicted in 1988. Mutulu was a member of the Black Liberation Army and was also stepfather to a late rap artist Tupac Shakur, who was mysteriously murdered in a drive-by shooting in Los Angeles in September of 1996. Tupac at the time was trying to broker peace between the Bloods and the Crips, 2 rival Los Angeles city street gangs. His aim was to unify them and politicize them, which led to numerous theories that American intelligence agencies were seeking to remove Tupac. Tupac's mother, Afeni Shakur, was a Harlem chapter member of the Black Panthers. She was arrested in April of 1968 with her then-husband, Lumumba Shakur, along with other members of the Black Panther Party for allegedly conspiring to carry out bombings in New York City. She was facing a 300-year prison sentence, but managed to spend only 2 years in jail before finally being acquitted. She left the party and married Mutulu Shakur, Tupac's namesake. Mutulu's brother, Zaid Shakur, was also a member of the Black Liberation Army, who along with Joanne Chesimard, otherwise known as Assata Shakur, was involved in an execution-style murder of New Jersey State Trooper Warner Forster. Zaid was also killed in the shootout and later became the namesake for Bernardine Dorn and Bill Ayers' son, playwright Zaid Dorn. Assata Shakur fled to Cuba, where former FBI informant and Weather Underground member Larry Grathwold asserts that the Weather Underground had an extensive network, even stating that the Weather Underground was a virtual project of the Cuban Intelligence Service, the DGI. Assisting in Shakur's escape was former Weather Underground and Black Liberation Army member Marilyn Buck. Buck was mysteriously pardoned during the Clinton administration, overseen by former head of the Department of Justice and long-suspected Black Panther Party member Eric Holder. Assata Shakur is currently living in Cuba and was the subject of Maxine Waters' 1998 letter, where she apologized for what she claimed was wrongfully requesting Shakur's extradition. Assata Shakur's attorney, Sophia Elijah, serves as Deputy Director of the Criminal Justice Institute at Harvard Law School. Elijah herself has traveled to Cuba on a number of occasions as part of the Venceremos Brigades, a pro-Cuban revolutionary group organized by members of the Students for a Democratic Society, a precursor to the Weather Underground, many of these trips being organized by Bernardine Dorn herself. At the time, Che Guevara was the new socialist icon, and although many brigadiers arrived to support Guevara, many of them also supported the gay liberation movement, which Cuban officials saw as a threat to Fidel Castro in Cuba. This resulted in a mutually agreed-upon don't ask, don't tell policy. Serving as the Director Emeritus of the Criminal Justice Institute is Charles J. Ogletree, Jr., who has represented Tupac Shakur as well as Anita Hill. Ogletree Jr. was an early mentor for both Michelle and Barack Obama during their time at Harvard University. Obama would later be instrumental in facilitating travel to the communist island by way of venues such as the Venceremos Brigades. Both Ogletree and Obama are regulars at Martha's Vineyard, where the Obama family recently bought a multi-million-dollar mansion. Ogletree was an early Barack Obama supporter and even admitted to hiding video footage of a young Barack Obama from the American people during the 2008 presidential campaign.
Open up your hearts and your minds to the words of Professor Derek Bell.
Now, what makes this so interesting when you think about it, of course, we hid this throughout the 2008 campaign, so no, I don't care if they find it now, but right, because it just told you that his growth had been astronomical in terms of his sense about race in a very complex world.
Here, Barack Obama can be seen protesting at Harvard University in 1991 in support of Derek Bell in his efforts of hiring more minority faculty members, in particular visiting Professor Regina Austin. In 1991, Bell, who was protesting and still on voluntary unpaid leave from Harvard Law School, was invited to Chicago by Vernon Jarrett. Jarrett was the first African American to be a syndicated columnist for the Chicago Tribune, whose board had included Weather Underground founder Bill Ayers' father, Thomas G. Ayers. Jarrett was also the father-in-law to President Barack Obama's close advisor, Valerie Jarrett. Bell's visit to Chicago was arranged by the Community Renewal Society, another Thomas G. Ayers outfit. Austin, like Derek Bell, are best known for being founders of the critical race theory, a discipline which maintains that society is divided along racial lines, white oppressors and black victims. So many radical ideas over so many years, and so many of them leading to one person, Barack Hussein Obama.
We need to know the full extent of Senator Obama's relationship with Acorn, who is now on the verge of maybe perpetrating one of the greatest frauds in voter history in this country, maybe destroying a fabric of democracy. Same front outfit organization that your campaign gave $832,000 for quote, lighting and site selection.
Barack Obama downplayed his relationship with Weather Underground co-founders Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dohrn, but evidence suggested that was anything but the case. But what's more is that evidence suggests that the paths of a young activist Barack Obama and the campaigns of the Weather Underground in the late 70s and early 80s were likely to have intersected. According to Obama's book, Dreams from My Father, Obama attended Occidental College between the years of 1979 and 1981, where he lauded his Marxist professors and their left-wing ideologies. By his sophomore year, Obama became involved with the Black Students Association and numerous South African anti-apartheid campaigns. His first protest speech in regards to the anti-apartheid campaign was held at an Occidental College event sponsored by the Students for an Economic Democracy, whose principal members involved the Students for a Democratic Society, the precursor to the Weathermen Underground. At the time, the Campaign for Economic Democracy's chairman was Tom Hayden, political activist and author of the Port Huron Statement, which served as the manifesto for the Students for a Democratic Society, and whose democracy group included the Weathermen Underground. It was the South African divestment movement at Occidental that led Obama to eventually transfer to Columbia University, where his public history becomes much less clear. Columbia University has long been known as one of the hotbeds of political activism. But unlike his time at Occidental, there's very few outside accounts of him ever having attended. According to a 2007 New York Times article, Obama's personal account of his New York years differs from what others say, and he declined repeated requests to release his Columbia transcripts. What was obtained were 5 locations where Obama claimed to live during his 4 years there: 3 on Manhattan's Upper West Side, 2 in Brooklyn, 1 in Park Slope, and the other in Brooklyn Heights. However, Manhattan phone book records show Obama as keeping the same place at 339 East 94th Street at least from 1982 to 1985, and retain the same phone number. Unless Obama was renting the East 94th Street apartment and subleasing it out to others, this would directly contradict his claim that he had moved around several times while in New York City, as well as his claim that he was still broke, as he details in his book, Dreams from My Father. Barack Obama also states in interviews with the New York Times, as well as the Columbia College Today, that he was a member of the Black Students Organization while at Columbia. Pictured is a photo of the Columbia Black Students Organization from the 1983 yearbook, The Columbian, which would have been Barack Obama's senior year. Not only is Obama not in the photo, but according to the former vice president of the Black Students Organization, Senior Mark Attia, there is no recollection of him ever having been a member, and there are no pictures in any of the yearbooks during the years in which he attended, nor is he listed as absent. But Obama also states to the New York Times that he didn't socialize, and that he spent a lot of time in the library, saying, quote, "I was like a monk," which would also seem to contradict the idea that Obama transferred from Occidental to Columbia for the specific reason of getting more involved in political activism. Obama had also claimed that he had taken a class at Columbia University from the Palestinian activist Edward Said, who had served as a member of the Palestine National Council working alongside Yasser Arafat, and even wrote the foreword for Weather Underground co-founder Bill Ayers' memoir, Fugitive Days. Here the two can be pictured together at a 1998 Palestinian fundraiser in Chicago, alongside Rashid Khalidi, who was an Edward Said Chair of Arab Studies at Columbia University. Will Ayers was attending Columbia Teachers College in the 1980s and clearly knew Said. Said clearly knew Obama. So is it possible that the young liberal activist Barack Obama could have crossed paths with Weather Underground co-founder Bill Ayers much earlier than he claimed in the 2008 presidential debates?
So let's get the record straight. Bill Ayers is a professor of education in Chicago. 40 years ago, when I was 8 years old, he engaged in despicable acts with a radical domestic group. I have roundly condemned those acts. 10 years ago, he served and I served on a school reform board that was funded by one of Ronald Reagan's former ambassadors and close friends, Mr. Annenberg. Other members on that board were the presidents of the University of Illinois, the president of Northwestern University, who happens to be a Republican, the president of the Chicago Tribune, a Republican-leaning newspaper. Mr. Ayers is not involved in my campaign. He has never been involved in this campaign, and he will not advise me in the White House.
Columbia University boasts a proud history of radical activism and maintains a research archives regarding past protests all the way back to 1958. But much of it is dedicated to the period between 1968 and 1972, and almost nothing regarding the year of 1981. Given the lack of information, it seems strange that a university famed for its activism has no recollection of one of their most famous activist students. According to the New York Times, Obama transferred to Columbia to test his commitments to social justice causes like apartheid and poverty in the Third World. If this is true, this would almost certainly put him in the same social circles as Said, William Ayers, Bernardine Dorn, and the Weather Underground. And if untrue, it's Obama who is not telling the truth. In 1981, the South African rugby tour, known as the Springbok Tour, had created mass protests across New Zealand and had extended into the United States. At the time, the government of South Africa was receiving worldwide criticism over its apartheid policy. The Springboks set out on a world tour as an act of proposed goodwill, which only resulted in ignited protests and violence. The Springboks had been scheduled to play 3 events in the United States. American anti-apartheid protesters were quick to respond and scheduled their protests, which led to a series of rescheduling by event organizers in order to thwart the protests. But on September 21, 1981, a bombing occurred at a rugby league office in Schenectady, New York. The tour was nearly canceled but continued after an emergency ruling by the United States Supreme Court, who denied an anti-apartheid protester group their attempt to halt the tour by legal means. Just days later, on September 26, 1981, a group of anti-apartheid protesters arrived at John F. Kennedy Airport in New York to protest the departure of the Springboks back to South Africa. The team had been aware of the protest and had previously changed their arrival schedule. The protesters were unaware of this and attacked security officials guarding the suspected plane with acid, wounding several people and blinding police officer Evan Goodstein. Arrests were made, but little was known about the attack or the protesters involved. A couple days later, on September 28, 1981, an article of Newsday released a few of the names of the arrestees. This was the only article which revealed the names of the acid throwers, but 2 of the names were misspelled, one being Timothy Blanc, misspelled as Blanc, and Mary Patton, misspelled as Marcy. An important detail, seeing as both were members of the Weather Underground. Also arrested was Yves Rozan, who was the registered owner to the yellow Honda used in the 1981 Brinks robbery. Just a month before, Rozan had been arrested on charges of first-degree riot and was arrested again on October 27, 1981, on criminal facilitation of the Brinks robbery and murders. The driver of that car was Susan Lisa Rosenberg, who was later arrested again in 1984 while unloading 740 pounds of dynamite and weapons from a car in New Jersey. She was arrested with Timothy Blanc, one of the key protesters in the acid attack at JFK. Many of these protesters were represented by activist lawyer Lynn Stewart, who had represented numerous members of the Weather Underground, including Kathy Bodine. In 2005, Stewart was convicted of aiding al-Qaeda terrorist Omar Abdel Rahman, otherwise known as the Blind Sheikh, in his effort to overthrow Egyptian leader Hosni Mubarak. Abdel Rahman was convicted in 1995 of planning to bomb the UN FBI headquarters in New York, the Holland and Lincoln tunnels, other landmarks, and conspiring to assassinate Mubarak. Stewart, who represented Abdel Rahman, as well as other al-Qaeda members, assisted Rahman in passing restricted messages to third parties, and even concealed a conversation between Rahman and Mohammed Yusri, a co-defendant and Stewart's interpreter, by shaking a water jar and tapping on the table to distract the prison guards from Yusri and Rahman's conversation. The conversation was in regards to the July 2001 bombing of the USS Cole, in which 17 U.S. sailors were killed as part of a scheme to release Rahman. Stewart was originally facing a 30-year sentence, but thanks to federal judge John George Keltel, she was sentenced to only 28 months. based on her extraordinary contribution, according to Judge Keltel. After an appeals court overturned the sentence, she was ordered to 10 years, of which she served only 4 thanks to a compassionate release order from the Obama administration. The Schenectady bombing, the airport acid attack, and the Brinks robbery were all connected through one common thread: the Weather Underground. Given the fact that the anti-apartheid movement was a primary motivating factor for Obama to move to New York City, and that his time there was roughly the same time as the Springbok protests and the acid attack, it would seem likely that Obama would have participated in one of these events, or at least have known about it, or at the very least had been familiar with Ayers and his activities. After all, the anti-apartheid cause was very near and dear to Obama's heart, by his own admission. This Newsday photograph is the only known photograph from the September 26th incident. The only known video is housed by the Vanderbilt University Television News Archive. Details regarding Obama's activism, his relationship with radical activist groups such as the Weathermen Underground, are as hazy as his time apparently spent at Columbia University. There's an overwhelming amount of connections between Barack Obama, Bill Ayers, Bernardine Dohrn, and numerous Marxist socialist groups that they both support. Connections that would seem to go further back than Obama's claim. And it's those hazy details that seem to have plagued Barack Obama ever since birth.
You know, if we want change to come, we would do well not to look at the sites of power we have no access to. The White House, even the Congress, the Pentagon. These are not the sites that we have access to. But lo and behold, we have absolute access to the community, the school, the neighborhood, the street, the classroom, the workplace, the shop, the farm. That's what we have. Why are we ignoring that and saying, I hope Obama makes peace? Forget about it. He's not going to do anything if you don't do something. So our job is movement building. His job is governance and sitting in the chair of empire.
The 1981 Brinks robbery was largely considered the last major incident connected to the Weather Underground. By the 1980s, many of its members were older, with families of their own, had migrated to different activist groups with a less tarnished image, or had simply moved on. But for some founding members such as Bernardine Dohrn, Bill Ayers, and Jeff Jones, their activism would continue from a place which they were all familiar, underground. Like his father Thomas Ayers, Bill Ayers knew that academia was a prime outlet for creating future revolutionaries, as well as providing a safe haven for he and his activist comrades, many of who were also educated at expensive universities and academic institutions. The Weather Underground sold themselves as a grassroots movement, but many of its members came from wealthy and highly influential families who, like the Ayers and the Bodines, were very much part of the system they claimed to rally against. His father, Thomas G. Ayers, was not just wealthy and influential, he was a titan, sitting on the executive board of directors of nearly every major industry in the Chicagoland area, particularly the First National Bank of Chicago and various international banking cartels, and even the Priory of Sion. Thomas Ayers was widely regarded as the real godfather of Illinois politics. And while Bill Ayers does not wield the same power, his influence still remains in politics and American education. In 2008, Bill Ayers was elected as vice president of the curriculum division of the AERA, or the American Educational Research Association. There he worked closely with Linda Darling Hammond, one of the developers of the curriculum management system C-Scope, and who helped establish the parameters for the controversial Common Core standards. Like Bill Ayers, Darling Hammond was a member of the Columbia Teachers College and served as education advisor to former President Barack Obama. Early in her career, Darling Hammond worked as a social science for the global policy think tank RAND Corporation. In addition to developing Common Core, Ayers and Darling Hammond helped implement federal government tracking programs for students. Through programs like Bill Ayers' Chicago Annenberg Challenge, more than $100 million had been moved to radical programs such as Acorn and Gamaliel. The Chicago Annenberg Challenge initiative was largely supported by Arne Duncan, who later became Secretary of Education, appointed by Barack Obama, who had also been a chair of the Chicago Annenberg Challenge. Another Ayers educational program is the Leadership for Quality Education, which is run by Bill Ayers' brother, John Ayers. The Leadership for Quality Education is a corporate group that administers the umbrella Small Schools Coalition, of which John and Bill Ayers are the lead members on the policy committee. In 1996, the Leadership for Quality Education received $50,000 from the Joyce Foundation, of which Barack Obama was a board member. And in 1997, the Leadership for Quality Education received an additional $95,000 from Obama and Ayers' Chicago Annenberg Challenge. That same year, the Chicago Annenberg Challenge Foundation gave $337,000 to the Small Schools Workshop at the University of Chicago. The Small Schools Workshop was founded by Bill Ayers and run by activist Mike Klonsky, who can be seen here with Bernadine Dorn as a representative for the Radical Students for a Democratic Society.
I'm Mike Klonsky, National Secretary of SDS, and this is Bernadine Dorn, Interorganizational Secretary. So you do what you were.
They're a communist faction making a big power play for SDS at this
point. Is there any communists back here?
I guess there is.
Are there communists in this organization?
Sure, man. There's a lot of communists. You'll see. When you come in and listen, you hear people talking, you can judge for yourself whether they're communists or not.
The Joyce Foundation was also a top donor to embattled progressive media outlet Media Matters, whose founder, David Brock, has been embroiled in scandal over the nonprofit group's finances. Brock is also the former lover of Comet Pizza and Ping Pong owner James Alefantis, who in recent years was the subject of the Pizzagate conspiracy. Another large source of Media Matters funding is the Tides Foundation, a controversial far-left clearinghouse that funds groups such as MoveOn.org, Acorn, and numerous other anti-war organizations. The Tides Foundation is funded largely in part by billionaire George Soros by way of his Open Society Institute. In 2017, the Soros-backed Tides Foundation, by way of the Alliance for Global Justice, donated $50,000 to Refuse Fascism, a left-wing organization that has openly boasted using violence to shut down conservative and libertarian speech. Fascist in approach, but anti-fascist in name, Antifa. In early 2017, thousands of students, professors, and others protested the appearance and organizing rally of Milo Yiannopoulos, a right-wing political commentator who had been scheduled to speak at the UC Berkeley College campus. This resulted in a riot which left dozens of people injured. The group started several fires, smashed windows, cars, ATMs, and looted downtown stores, as well as assaulting Milo fans, accusing them of being Nazis. 4 of the members were arrested the very next week after they became violent during a protest against libertarian commentator and vice co-founder Gavin McGinnis, who was speaking at New York University. If the activities of Refuse Fascism and Antifa are reminiscent of groups such as the Weather Underground and the Students for a Democratic Society, it's likely because their funding comes from similar sources. Sources such as the Tides Foundation, Acorn, Gamaliel, the Joyce Foundation, and Media Matters. And while Refuse Fascism claims that they are not affiliated with Antifa, many of their protests and events seem to oddly coincide, many events which are advertised on Refuse Fascism's website. Refuse Fascism was also linked to a violent protest in Washington, D.C. during the inauguration of President Donald Trump. One of the main organizers for this event, as well as the organization Refuse Fascism, is Weather Underground co-founder Bill Ayers. Another major donor to Media Matters is the Pritzker Family Foundation from the Hyatt Hotel chain fame. The director of the Family Foundation is Penny Pritzker, who served as the national finance chairman of Obama's 2008 presidential campaign and was a member of Obama's Economic Recovery Advisory Board. Also in charge of the Pritzker Family Foundation is Penny Pritzker's brother and governor of the state of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, who along with his wife and his brother-in-law are under federal criminal investigation for a property tax appeal that occurred during his 2018 campaign. Pritzker's family has also donated more than $1.5 million to the Chicago school, the Erickson Institute, whose former trustee and member of the executive committee was the late Thomas G. Ayers, father of Weather Underground co-founder Bill Ayers. Also having served on the Erickson board was Bill Ayers' wife and Weather Underground co-founder Bernadine Dorn. One of the Erickson Institute's founders is Barbara Taylor Bowman, who is the Institute's Irving B. Harris Professor of Child Development and was also president of the Institute from 1994 to 2001. Barbara Taylor Bowman is also the mother of former Obama senior advisor Valerie Jarrett. Jarrett's maternal grandparents were Robert Rochon Taylor and Dorothy Taylor. Robert was the first African-American head of the Chicago Housing Authority, and Dorothy was an early Planned Parenthood activist. Robert Taylor was involved with the American Peace Mobilization alongside Frank Marshall Davis, Obama's mentor. Taylor also served with Davis on the Chicago Civil Liberties Committee, a civil rights progressive group suspected as a communist front. Both men would also serve as mentors to a young Barack Obama in Hawaii in the 1970s, where they would also work on a publicity team of a communist-controlled packing house workers' union, alongside Valerie Jarrett's father-in-law, Vernon Jarrett. Along with the Pritzker Family Foundation, the Erickson Institute receives funding from the Woods Charitable Fund, of which Barack Obama and Weather Underground co-founder Bill Ayers served as board members. After receiving a $100 million donation from J.B. Pritzker and wife M.K. Pritzker, the Northwestern School of Law became the Northwestern Pritzker School of Law, whose graduates include Sidley Austin partner Newton Minow, former Obama advisor Tina Chen, former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel, activist lawyer Leo Branton Jr., and of where Bernadine Dorn worked as a clinical associate professor, and whose decades-long Board of Trustee members included Thomas G. Ayers. Like Thomas Ayers and brother John, Bill Ayers and wife Bernadine Dorn's adopted son, Chesa Bodine, is deeply entrenched in politics, activism, and education. In Chesa Bodine's book, entitled Gringo, Bodine details some of his experiences working with the Hugo Chavez administration while at the presidential palace in Venezuela. He describes subjects such as presidential international relations and being involved in the revolutionary process. Bodine was also involved in the third annual conference in solidarity with the Bolivarian Revolution. Bodine also describes working as a think tank researcher with ties to the Ministry of Higher Education. That think tank is likely the Miranda International Center, which is focused on Cuban-style education for Venezuelan school children, and of which Father Bill Ayers sits as a board member. Both Ayers and the Miranda International Center have been accused of rewriting constitutions within South America and playing a major role in attempting to seize power for Chavez in 2007. Another book of Bodine's, entitled The Venezuelan Revolution, 100 Questions, 100 Answers, was co-authored with Gabriel Gonzalez, an author in Venezuela and Ecuador, who currently works with President Chavez's team of advisors. This would suggest that at the time, Chesa Bodine was a foreign agent, who according to U.S. statute provides propaganda for a foreign regime for the purpose of attempting to influence U.S. public opinion, policy, and laws. But there seems to be no such registration for Chesa Bodine. Perhaps it's because Chesa Bodine's grandfather is famed attorney Leonard Bodine, who had been a longtime legal counsel for Fidel Castro. This might also explain how Bodine was able to secure a book deal for his first book by way of Scribner, a subsidiary of major publisher Simon & Schuster. In February of 2019, the San Francisco Chronicle reported that of the 5 candidates that were running for the open district attorney's seat, Chesa Bodine was the only one who had yet to release his financial statements. It's unknown exactly where Chesa Bodine receives much of his funding, but odds would suggest that billionaire George Soros is involved, by way of the Democracy Alliance, which features organizations such as Center for American Progress, Media Matters, and Organizing for Action. Soros himself has been outwardly vocal about his desire to influence state district attorney races, and in recent years the effect of his success is staggering. One particular case of note being Chicago's Cook County, where the incumbent state's attorney Anita Alvarez was defeated by Kim Foxx. Here Foxx can be seen with the 2019 candidate for San Francisco District Attorney, great-great-nephew of Marxist theoretician Louis B. Bodine, grandson to prolific attorney Leonard Bodine, son to Weather Underground members Kathy Bodine and David Gilbert, and adopted son to Weather Underground co-founders Bernadine Dorn and Bill Ayers, Chesa Bodine. March 6, 1970, a townhouse explodes at 18 West 11th Street in the Greenwich Village neighborhood of Manhattan, where members of the Weather Underground were creating bombs in the basement when one of them accidentally exploded, killing Terry Robbins, Ted Gold, and Diana Oughton. Surviving the blast were Weather Underground members Kathy Wilkerson and Chesa Bodine's mother, Kathy Bodine. Both Bodine and Wilkerson were out on bail, stemming from assault charges from the Days of Rage riots in Chicago, and both fled the scene before they could be questioned. Investigators discovered a 37mm anti-tank shell from 1916, as well as 57 sticks of dynamite, 4 12-inch pipe bombs, and 30 blasting caps, most with fuses already attached, along with timing devices and a series of maps detailing a tunnel network below Columbia University. 18 West 11th Street was also known as the Greek Revival Townhouse, built in 1845, and during the 1920s housed Charles E. Merrill, co-founder of Merrill Lynch. Actor Dustin Hoffman and his wife Ann Byrne were living in the townhouse next door. Here Hoffman can be seen removing a painting from the townhouse shortly after the blast. According to former Weather Underground member Mark Rood, the bombs were intended for a non-commissioned Army officer's dance at Fort Dix Army Base in New Jersey, while others were scheduled to be detonated from inside the administration building at Columbia University. Terry Robbins, who was killed while assembling one of the bombs, was also an organizer for the 1968 Kent State University Student Rebellion and a founding member of the Weathermen Underground. Robbins had also been indicted for his involvement in organizing and inciting riots during the Days of Rage protests. Ted Gold was an organizer of the Columbia University protests of 1968, and Diana Oughton was an organizer of the 1969 SDS National Convention. Like her contemporary Bill Ayers, Diana Oughton came from not only wealth, but generational wealth and an influential family.
Diana Oughton came from a background of family wealth and power. The Oughtons have been community leaders in Dwight, Illinois for 100 years. The family runs the local bank. And it founded the Keeley Institute, said to be the first of its kind in this country for the treatment of drug and alcohol addicts. The football stadium is named for the Oughtons. When he heard the news of his daughter's death in the Greenwich Village townhouse explosion, James Oughton, a local banker and former Republican member of the Illinois House, cut short a vacation in London with another daughter, Carol, and hurried home.
The building at the time was owned by Kathy Wilkerson's father, a radio station executive who was vacationing in the Caribbean. Here, Wilkerson gives her account of the event.
I had gotten hold of the keys through a ruse to the house, and we had been there for a week, and my parents were coming back that evening. And so not only did we have to prepare for this action, but we had to I wanted the house to be clean and have my parents never know that we had been there, because I was very uncomfortable about involving them at all. And so I had just washed all the sheets that we had used and was ironing them so we could have clean sheets on all the beds.
And then the bomb went off and you just ran without knowing what was happening. Did you know that Kathy Bodine was also fleeing the townhouse?
Well, when it went off, I was ironing and the floor sank and the ironing board started to fall over, and I was holding this hot iron in my hand trying to figure out what to do with it, and there were no surfaces left. It was just dust and swirling material. And I knew at that point that Terry and Diana were in the basement, and I knew it was probable that they had not survived this. And within seconds, the fire emerged from the basement. And at that point, I just headed for whatever daylight I could see, and I picked up Kathy on the way.
Kathy Wilkerson was indicted by a federal grand jury on charges of conspiring to bomb and to kill, but she didn't surrender until 1980, when she was tried and convicted of illegal possession of dynamite and sentenced to 3 years in prison. She later spent her time as a teacher teaching mathematics in high schools and adult education programs, and authored a book about her experience in the Weather Underground entitled Flying Close to the Sun: My Life and Times as a Weatherman. Following the Greenwich Village townhouse explosion, Wilkerson and other members of the Weather Underground were placed on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list and forced to go into hiding. Providing safe housing for some of those members was Linda Sue Evans, another member of the Weather Underground organization, and Students for a Democratic Society.
We want to live a life that isn't based on materialistic values, and yet the whole system of government and the economy of America is based on profit, on personal greed and selfishness. So that in order to be human, in order to love each other and be equal with each other and not place each other in roles, we have to destroy the kind of government that keeps us from asserting our positive values of life.
Evans had previously traveled to Vietnam, where she represented SDS and their support for the National Liberation Front of South Vietnam, which supported the unification efforts of the North. Evans had also been arrested in 1970 during the Days of Rage for conspiracy and crossing state lines to incite a riot. She was arrested again in April of 1970 for attempting to forge checks using a false identification, thanks to a tip from ex-member of the Weathermen, Larry Grathwohl, who was working as an undercover informant for the FBI. Evans' final arrest came on May 11, 1985, for harboring fugitive and Weather Underground member Marilyn Jean Buck for her involvement in the 1981 Brinks armored truck robbery case. Evans was charged with 11 violations of the Gun Control Act, having purchased 4 guns under a false identification. She was later additionally charged for terrorist actions after 740 pounds of dynamite were found in her apartment, along with evidence of a plan to target the U.S. Capitol Building, the National War College, the Navy Yard Computer Center, the Navy Yard Officers Club, Israeli Aircraft Industries, the FBI, and the New York Patrolmen's Benevolent Association. In March of 1987, Evans was found guilty of all charges and was sentenced to 40 years in prison. In 2001, then-President Bill Clinton commuted the sentence of Evans to 16 years, as well as granting clemency to fellow Weather Underground member Susan Rosenberg. This was done at the 11th hour of Bill Clinton's presidency, and neither Bill nor wife Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton would explain the controversial decision, saying, quote, "I'm out of office now. I'm not talking anymore." What was known is that the decision to grant clemency to both Rosenberg and Evans came largely in part because of an appeal from Democratic Representative of New York, Gerald Nadler. It was largely suspected that Clinton owed Nadler a favor due to his ardent support and defense of the then-president in response to accusations of his sexual misconduct. Nadler's already controversial decision came under more scrutiny when it was discovered that the Rosenberg family and the Nadler family had shared connections through Rabbi Rolando Matalon and B'nai Yeshurun Temple. Upon release from prison, Rosenberg, like her contemporaries Dorn, Ayers, Jones, Rood, Bodine, and Wilkerson, Rosenberg retreated into the educational system, and in 2004 was offered a teaching position at Hamilton College. The rippling effect from radical Bill Ayers and his Weather Underground contemporaries on the American educational system cannot be overstated. After all, it's because of Bill Ayers that we have programs such as Common Core and many federal student tracking programs. These programs have been in effect for decades and have multiple psychological ramifications. Take the case of Matthew Cummings, a preacher who was a preschool student of Weather Underground member Diana Oughton, who was killed in the Greenwich townhouse explosion.
Matthew Cummings, in regard to my own view of Diane Oughton. Now, who is Diane Oughton? Diane Oughton was my preschool teacher. She also was very much involved with SDS, Students for a Democratic Society. She was the original lover of William Ayers. Hello. In 1968, some people came to my mother, my mom's name is Doris Patterson, and talked to her about a very well up and coming grad student at the University of Michigan who was going to revolutionize education, and that the request to my mother was to put me in an open school. That open school, probably most of you have heard of it, it's called Children's Community School. My mom thought about it, and after a conversation which my mom had with Diane Oughton, who was one of my mom's best friends, my mom decided to put me in this school. the first day of school, our principal was none other than William Ayers. After he left, Diane Oughton said this to me and to all the other students: you no longer have to listen to your parents. You no longer have to listen to anyone of authority. We're now your authority. Now, remember, I'm a 7-year-old rambunctious little boy. So the moment Diane Oughton made that comment, I was happy as ever. Because I was going to get to go home and challenge my mother about all the things that she told me to do. And Diane Oughton, the reason why I find her more important than William Ayers is because Diane Oughton really became one of the major bomb makers for the Weathermen Underground. Hello? To this day, my mom is still afraid to a point of William Ayers and others because of how effective they have done to our education system.
Yeah, no kidding.
See, William Ayers has his tenure at the University of Illinois in Chicago. Children's Community School laid the foundation for helping to dummy down our children.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hello? So for me, it's personal. And because it's personal, I want to say this to every patriot here. If you don't make sure that this next election, you don't take it personal to get rid of this socialist, communist person, you need to take it personal.
Decades have passed since the Weathermen Underground first issued their declaration of a state of war and committed numerous acts of violence throughout the United States. The radical militant group no longer exists by name, but the influence and effect of Bill Ayers, Bernadine Dorn, Jeff Jones, Kathy Wilkerson, Susan Rosenberg, and Diana Oughton still remain, whether it be in our educational system, from preschool all the way to the university level, then on into our legal system, and politicians from the local level to federal, while at the same time holding influence in media and entertainment industries which tell the story, all sharing an affinity for the use of one premise, the guise of human rights, and whose organizations often stole more than they delivered. The Weathermen didn't rage against the machine, they were the machine. Wealthy, white, influential, well-funded, and often supported with some of the finest legal assistance money can buy. And while the names have changed, the Weathermen no longer remain underground, and new generations of Weathermen are being educated and influenced today. You don't need to look far to see that the radical left activism still remains. Whether it's New York Mayor Bill de Blasio's communist Nicaragua Solidarity Network, whose support for the Sandinistas and the Fair Play for Cuba Committee enrolled famous members such as JFK assassin Lee Harvey Oswald, or former Obama Green Jobs czar Van Jones, whose involvement in the George Soros-funded Apollo Alliance has him working alongside Weathermen Underground co-founder Jeff Jones. You can see it in people like Maria del Rosario Castro, who was a co-founder of Socialist Chicano Party La Raza Unida, who have sought to create Aztlán, a separate country located in the southwestern United States. Communist, separatist, notoriously violent, and known to traffic both humans and drugs across the southern border. Maria del Rosario Castro is also the mother of Representative Joaquin Castro of Texas and Mayor Julian Castro of San Antonio. You can see it in the activism of Marxist professor Donald Harris, whose involvement with the URPE, or the Union for Radical Political Economics, was an early spin-off of the Radical Students for a Democratic Society, or Weathermen Underground. Harris met Shamala Gopalan, a cancer researcher from southern India, while demonstrating at Berkeley University. They had a child who is now Democratic presidential primary frontrunner, Senator Kamala Harris of California. These are just a few of a multitude of examples in which the Ayers family and the Weathermen Underground influence has infiltrated every one of the institutions they claim to oppose. Like Bob Dylan said, you don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. But are the times truly changing, or just repeating themselves? Those who control the weather can control the climate, socially, economically, spiritually, financially, and politically. The ideals and aspirations of these groups still remain, and they hope to achieve them by any means necessary. They knew then, and they knew now. In the words of former Chinese chairman Mao Zedong, it takes a single spark to start a prairie fire.
Those who were arrested and charged for taking part in the attacks and destruction last night and again this morning.
We were determined to see through our strategy of militant opposition and trying to mobilize all of the militants to come to Chicago to display their anger, their outrage, and their deep opposition to this war.
No way to be committed to nonviolence in the middle of the most violent society that history's ever created.
This fall, in Chicago, we will lead massive demonstrations against the war in support of the Black Panther Party and in solidarity with all political prisoners.
That we'll fight the internal army, which is the police force. Yes, more physical contact if that's necessary. Whatever it takes, we'll do.
We wonder now what'll happen. Now it's a statue. Will it be a policeman performing his duty tomorrow?
You get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them.